This next story, of course, deals with Microsoft trying to buy Activision Blizzard because there's something new every week. We found out this week that CMA, the is it the UK regulators, the Competition of Markets Authority and Markets Authority, yeah, it's UK, said that they're doing an inquiry into the merger and has expanded to a second phase due to a number of antitrust concerns. This came out because Microsoft, I guess, scathing response, basically saying that CMA is just parroting the same things that Sony was saying. And it was essentially that basically it would be anti-competitive and would hurt the industry as a whole if Microsoft were to own Activision Blizzard, and that they will likely do all sorts of exclusivity stuff with those things that is unfair to everybody else in the business. It is essentially the brass tacks of that, okay? Because of that as well, because the regulators in UK are going through all this, rumors started circulating that Sony delayed a third-party State of Play showcase because of all of this. So, with that said right now, we'll get into more parts of this soon. Let's get into the brass tacks of this right now. Zero, what did you think about when you heard Microsoft's response to what the CMA said about their merger opportunity?
It's a bit funny because it came right on the heels of Brazil's judgment on the whole situation. Because for anyone who has forgotten, Brazil got similar concerns from Sony. Basically, Sony was saying, "Hey, you can't let them own Call of Duty because if we don't have Call of Duty accessible on our systems, no one's going to play on PlayStation." And the Brazilian SEC equivalent pretty much just kind of had a scathing reply to Sony, basically saying, "We're not here to do your marketing for you. Get off your ass and do your own damn marketing." And it was kind of one of those things that was interesting because just that was one potential choke point that we had saw with the entire merger and everything. And then to hear that the UK kind of has an opposite take of, "Hey, actually, yeah, Sony's got some legit concerns, we think." It's kind of an interesting inversion to see. But then to hear that there's a potential for Sony to hold the third-party publisher State of Play potentially hostage while this whole thing is going on, that's going to be interesting because if true, that could run afoul of some legal obligations, especially with concerns to things like stocks and things like that, because you can't hold financially important information, especially stuff like a third-party showcase that could be showing off very, very interesting or high-profile games that are coming to your platform that could potentially make your platform money.
Right.
So that's kind of where I had the concern with that of, okay, well, that's interesting. You want to talk about potentially holding some third-party IPs hostage from being shown, but that might not play nice with regulators around the world because they could see it as you not doing your fiduciary duty and showing all of your cards in your hand that could potentially make your platform money.
And they're also stating to the UK regulators as well that Sony will lose regular COD players even if COD isn't exclusive to Xbox. So they're laying it on pretty damn thick right now. The thing that really chaffs me about all of this is that Sony could very easily, if Microsoft were to decide to make COD exclusive, first off, COD is not the biggest game in the world right now. It's top 10, but it's not the biggest. That's Fortnite. Fortnite is the biggest game in the world still at this point. And I would say other free-to-play games are probably bigger too. Like, I would say maybe Roblox is probably bigger and stuff like that. So that's overstating it as well. But Sony could easily just say, okay, you're going to make exclusive? Fine, we'll pay EA X amount of cash to make Battlefield exclusive to PS5. Like, you could easily do that. So they're really overstating this. But from what I've read, too, from people who live in the UK, is that the CMA is an absolute joke. Like, no one takes them seriously. Like, they don't know what they're doing, essentially. So maybe this isn't too much of a shock, but because we're in America and we're not familiar with this, with CMA, a lot of people are not surprised that they have this take, and they're basically parroting what Sony is saying on this one.
With regards to Sony and everything, Sony could also easily dig into their own brands and revise some of their stuff that they've kind of put on ice. I know in private conversation, you had mentioned one potential franchise they could bring back up is the Resistance series, the Resistance Fall of Man games, for anyone who needs a refresher. And I just kind of thought about this too, with how good the gunplay in Destiny 2 is, and now that Sony owns Bungie, I would say I could see them maybe doing a Skunkworks project between Bungie and Guerrilla Games for maybe a Killzone shooter that has the gunplay that Bungie is known for. Just they've got a whole bunch of potential in their hands, and so that's why I'm almost kind of in the Brazil camp of just, hey, yeah, just this whole concern for Sony holding no cards if they lose Call of Duty. It's kind of a red herring. Just they've got the brands. It's just they don't want to put in the work and spend money to actually have to really keep their customer base kind of interested in their stuff.
Yeah.
So
they're overstating the importance of COD and what this merger is doing. Now, because of the regulation problem that they're having now, it has been reported that Activision stockholder or shareholders have now been selling off shares, some of their shares. I forgot what the amount was. And it's due to the fear that this may not go through. And on top of that, which may or may not have anything to do with what's going on with regulations, it's been announced that Microsoft has laid off about 1,000 employees across all divisions of Microsoft. Now, when it comes to sales, I'm not really sure if Microsoft has had sales issues or had issues with getting money in. So I'm not entirely sure. My thought process, to a certain extent, is that these cutting of jobs is a safety mechanism in case this falls through. Because if this falls through, it's going to hit their stock big time. Like, it's gonna hurt. So everyone might be preparing for this to not get through. Do you think that this might not go through, like, to a certain extent? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's likely it will go through, but I will say that I'm not 100% confident. I'd say maybe my confidence is like 60-40. So 60% will probably go through, but 40% might not go through. But again, that's kind of where my confidence level on this whole thing is.
I think it will go through in America. I think if the UK really drags this, and the US and the EU look at this and go, yeah, I'll go through. Yeah, it's fine. Then the UK will just step back and go, yeah, okay, fine, it's fine. So that's what I think is going on, because apparently it's the FTC or the SEC. I forget which.
Probably SEC in the US.
Yes, thank you. They are rumored to be coming up with a decision of some sort in November. And if UK is dragging their heels, which I think is what's going on here, I think they're waiting for the US to say something first. I think that's what's going on. Because then as soon as, if America does it first, and they're okay with it, then I would expect the UK to just be like, yeah, okay, fine. Maybe the EU would have an issue or two, but you can easily just pay a fine to the EU and be done with it. Yeah, I think it is going to go through in the end. This might be a speed bump. It might be a minor inconvenience to a certain extent, But if they're doing a second inquiry and doing more research, I'm going to assume that more research is going to turn up that, oh, wait, Sony is basically bullshitting here. So, in that aspect, it might just be the thing that Microsoft needs to then let it go through. And there was an article by Jez Corden from Windows Insight. I think it was Windows Central. He did an editorial that basically saying that if this doesn't go through, this is going to hurt Sony more than anything, because then that means the gloves are off and Microsoft can compete in the exclusives game much more than Sony can if they wanted to. So, and he's got a point there, because if, in my opinion, if this doesn't go through, I mean, both Microsoft and Activision are going to be pissed. And that could cause Activision to say, okay, you know what? We'll just do exclusive COD we'll do exclusive Call of Duty for Microsoft. Okay, whatever. Overwatch 3, exclusive to Microsoft. There we go. Didn't stop it, did it there, Sony? So I think it's going to go through, but it's just a speed bump at this point.
I think that's pretty much a fair take. This is probably just a small bump in the road, especially if the CMA is as toothless as some people in the UK are saying.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this podcast segment. The Capital Games podcast is done every week, and we post it on all your favorite podcast apps, as well as segments on YouTube. If you want to listen to another segment, you can listen to a new one right there on the screen. We also do a movie podcast called the Capital Games Movie Club. If you'd like, you can go ahead and click on that and see all the movies that we have reviewed from that point. Thank you for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon.